Susan Slusser of the San Francisco Chronicle reporting that rival teams believe the Giants have, quote, the edge with star right-handed pitcher 25-year-old Yoshinobu Yamamoto. The winter meetings have kicked off. Logan Webb got followed on Instagram by Shohei Ohtani. So much to get to next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started is the winter meetings have kicked off. This podcast coming out late. I apologize. I was kind of just waiting to see if anything of significance happened. But at the end of the day, literally we do have reports that are juicy. And it starts with Susan Slusser sending out first a tweet that said, I think this was from Sunday night, that said, quote, "I'm hearing an awful lot of buzz on the Giants and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Some other teams in the hunt for him think the Giants might have an edge." And then later on, she wrote an article and she said nearly half of the league has called about Yamamoto, according to the Kyoto News, and executives from two teams who have had interest in him told the Chronicle on Sunday they believe the Giants have the edge. And this is a huge deal because if they do, I mean, first of all, Susan Slusser is as good of a local beat reporter as there is. And to the fact that she's got two representatives from two teams who have had interest in Yamamoto saying that they believe the Giants have the edge is obviously significant. And my take on this is that we learned that Yamamoto had like Zoom meetings essentially last week with interested teams. And there are so many teams interested in this guy who, again, right-handed pitcher out of Japan, has won the equivalent of the Cy Young Award 3 consecutive years, has won the MVP award 3 consecutive years, 25 years old, and likely to get the second largest contract this offseason behind only Shohei Ohtani. It's going to be a lot less, probably more than probably like half, roughly, of what Ohtani gets. But nonetheless, you're talking about a 25-year-old potential like impact ace-level pitcher. And I can't stress enough how much the fact that he's only 25 is important because, you can talk about ace-level pitchers, but if you're signing them normally in free agency, they're going to be age 30, age 31 or something like that. And you do end up giving them, like 6, 7, 8 years if they're really good. Whereas if you're 25 and teams consider you a potentially ace caliber pitcher and this guy throws mid 90s he sits in the mid 90s and touches upper 90s with his fastball. He's got a huge like Clayton Kershaw-esque curveball. His splitter is his best pitch, even though those other two pitches are really good. And I mean, the thing is, the Giants, yeah, they need a star and all that. And this guy is a star, but I think a position player or like a hitter, a guy who plays every day is important for them. And so like in some ways, if their big move was just Yamamoto, in a way it would be unsatisfying. I guess, I mean, it depends on what else they do. Like if they were to get Yamamoto and Bellinger or Yamamoto and Jung-Hoo Lee or something, there's definitely ways to have a really good offseason. I just think like when the rubber meets the road here, Yamamoto is going to just probably have a huge impact on whatever team he signs with. And it's not a thing where you worry about decline for a long, long time. And the comp, by the way, that has been thrown out there, I've seen it from a couple different places, is kind of peak Zach Greinke, because he's not like a crazy strikeout guy, but he's got pinpoint command with all of his pitches, doesn't walk anybody, and he allowed like one. People present it in like rate. I think he allowed a home run on like 1% of balls in play against him or something. So he really suppressed the home run. He certainly suppresses walks, and he's so young. And for the Giants to have the edge, so the way anyway to finish the point, I think we know there's been reporting that he basically met with teams via Zoom or whatever, like online last week. And that this week being the winter meetings, he's kind of laying low, maybe thinking about things and narrowing down the list. And that next week, we're going to see him meet with teams in person, teams that move on to the next round. And so when Slusser says this direct quote that executives from two teams who have had interest in him believe the Giants have the edge. So it's like a question of how would teams know that? Well, I'm guessing that these are teams that had those Zoom meetings and were told essentially that you're not on to the next round. And so then they probably feel a little bit more comfortable speaking freely about, about who they think might have the edge. And I don't know why they would think specifically the Giants and tell that to Slusser. It is kind of a mystery as to where exactly that information comes from, but it's not surprising. Like I said, there's Ohtani, there's a big gap, but Ohtani's like the best player in the universe, okay? But Yamamoto is next in this free agent class. And it's not to say that he's a huge, he is a huge drop-off potentially, but that's not saying much considering we're talking about Shohei Ohtani. And so if the Giants do in fact have the edge with this guy and do in fact end up signing Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it's not the same as Shohei Ohtani, but it's basically the next best thing. And we also had a report, don't forget, from John Morosi about a week ago saying that the Giants are set. They have their whole heart and finances devoted. They have devoted their whole heart and finances to landing Yamamoto or Ohtani. And a lot of people responded to me with why or and why not both. I don't think just because Morosi phrased it as or, that excludes the possibility of both. And as I have discussed, their future obligations financially are so they are not committed to anyone long term except Logan Webb, and it's like $20 million a year. And so you could definitely add they have the capability financially, realistically, to add both of these guys. It's just a matter of, do they want to take your money? Do they want to play for you? And so anyway, this is the juiciest news we've had so far this offseason, that Slusser's hearing the Giants have the edge with Yamamoto. So coming up in just a minute, this is perhaps even juicier. We have rumblings that the Giants met in person with Shohei Ohtani in San Francisco on Saturday. And we're going to get into that whole situation. There was a photograph that was taken. There's Logan Webb Instagram, Shohei Ohtani following him all kinds of stuff to get into in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by our extremely good friends over at FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And so if you were bold and you're like, you know what, I could have bet on some heavy favorite with my $5, but if you went, okay, I'm going to bet on the 49ers to beat the Eagles, you would have got $150 in bonus bets, because man, did the 49ers spank the Eagles. And coming up this next week on Sunday, the 49ers are playing the Seahawks, and the current odds there, the 49ers money line at minus 560. So place a $5 bet on that, and if the 49ers do in fact win, you get $150 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, as you would expect from FanDuel. You can bet on so many different things. So again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, as promised, we are going to discuss the seemingly, I don't want to say likely, it seems that Shohei Ohtani met with the Giants on Saturday in San Francisco. Don't forget, we heard that he would hold it against it if it came out that that teams had met with him. But certain things are inevitable. Like, somebody snapped a photo of Farhan Zaidi and Buster Posey and Bob Melvin all dressed in really nice clothes at Oracle Park on Saturday. So they were meeting with somebody. You don't dress up like that at the ballpark if you're not meeting with somebody important. Could have been Yamamoto. It could be that the timeline that's the thing, is that you never know what exactly is true and until things go down this time of year, and you hear a lot of stuff. Anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, day 2 of the winter meetings, and things are going to pick up. Things are going to happen here in Nashville. And when I say here, I'm not in Nashville, but there in Nashville. Also, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Anyway, the next bit of news is essentially that there's speculation that the Giants met with Shohei Ohtani in person in San Francisco on Saturday. And at this stage of the negotiations, and we've heard there was a report from Jeff Passan that 3 teams, the Mets and the Rangers, I actually am blanking on the other team, the Mets, the Rangers, and Red Sox, had shifted their attention to other players outside of Shohei Ohtani. And to me, again, that kind of indicates that there probably was like an initial round, and that certain teams were told that they weren't moving on to the next round. And in that article by Jeff Passan, he mentioned 4 teams: the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Angels as teams that were confirmed by sources of his to still be in the running. And then he did go out of his way to mention the San Francisco Giants are also very interested in Ohtani, but their standing in the sweepstakes is unknown. And so the one team where he doesn't really have intel on, at least of the teams that he mentions that are tied to Ohtani. So anyway, if in fact they met with him on Saturday, that would indicate that they in fact are still in that running. And if it's come down to 5 teams, and we did hear today that possibly the Braves are in that mix as well, so maybe 6 teams. But if you're in the final 5, and remember, I keep saying this, but when Ohtani first came to the United States, the Giants were, all 30 teams made a pitch to him initially, and then there was a group of finalists, and it wasn't a very big list. It was like 5 or 7 teams or so, and the Giants were one of them, coming off a 98 loss season, and they didn't have a designated hitter in the National League. And so his decision, like, for all we know, he wanted to come to the Giants, but he was just like, I have to DH. I want to go to an American League team. And so we just have no idea. But if they're one of 5 teams that are still in on this guy, then there's just reason for hope and optimism. Of course, there's a chance that you don't get him, but if you're still, if he hasn't said no to you yet, there's a chance that you do. And so all we're doing now is playing the waiting game with both Yamamoto and Ohtani, and I think both of these guys are kind of holding up the market at this point. And so that's why it would be disappointing if neither signs until like the week after the winter meetings, because here we are, everybody gathers in Nashville. That's the time to get something done. But if they're intent, if the players are intent on waiting, because the report, I'm not sure I even mentioned this, from John Heyman today, that a GM of a team that essentially has a meeting still scheduled with Shohei Ohtani, Heyman said that meeting was for next week. And so that would seem to indicate that Ohtani's not going to sign at the winter meetings. So, but again, these things are true until they're not. And you never quite know. I mean, a team could be told that and have it not come to fruition. But currently reading a tweet from Susan Slusser. I don't even know what it says, but we're going to read it live on the air anyway, just because I'm constantly refreshing Twitter, as you have to do here at the winter meetings. But Slusser saying, people seem to think a team, quote, leaking is how all information is obtained, as if celebrity athletes traveling and in cities, they usually aren't in, I don't know what she's saying here. This doesn't make, she's speaking in English. They usually are invisible to people who aren't with the team somehow. The Giants aren't saying a word to anyone about any of this. So that's actually a good segue, because somebody was saying to me, like, on Twitter, that there was some report that the Giants were, it was the when Morosi said that the Giants were devoting their whole heart and finances to getting one of Yamamoto or Ohtani. There was somebody who was like saying that it's classic team leaking information in order to make it appear that they tried, and then they miss out, and then they say, well, we tried because those reports came out. But that's just dumb. Like, nobody's going to be satisfied a lick if they don't come away with a big fish, And so even that's almost worse, like, to say, oh, we tried, because people do not want to hear that anymore. And Slusser is backing that up, saying the Giants aren't saying a word to anyone about any of this. And so don't take it from me, take it from Susan Slusser. But as I was saying, I mean, you should see the picture if you haven't. There's Bob Melvin, Farhan Zaidi, and Buster Posey. Nice clothes, kind of like buttoned up white shirt on Bob Melvin. Nice sport coats on all 3. And it's a tight circle. That's part of how you keep things under wraps, is that, like, I've heard, Farhan Zaidi doesn't even talk to his family about what's going on, because, I mean, maybe he does, but that was just an example of executives in the game. Like they don't even talk to other members of their staff because they just do not want information getting out. And that is totally how the Giants operate in this realm, is that nothing comes out. But anyway, it would appear that the Giants are still in the Ohtani sweepstakes. And then, so to be still in the Ohtani sweepstakes and to have a couple teams believe you have the edge for whatever reason on the second best free agent in this class, and then we're not even mentioning position players like, Jung-Hoo Lee and Cody Bellinger and Matt Chapman, and Farhan Zaidi keeps talking about trades as a possibility to get like more athletic in the middle of the diamond, and you start to think about who does that mean? Like you're talking about, he mentioned shortstop and center field. So if it's not Bellinger or Jung-Hoo Lee, you might start looking at trades and whatnot. And so anyway, there's just a wide range of possibilities for how this thing could go. And hopefully we get, the winter meetings are the time for some movement to finally start happening. And I hope that's what happens. So far, towards the, end of the day in Nashville, certainly nothing really has happened today. And so we'll see. There's never a guarantee that the winter meetings mean things are going to pop off. And if Ohtani and Yamamoto don't sign here, that could really just hold everything up. So coming up in just a minute, though, more about Ohtani and this kind of story that is a story that Ohtani just followed Logan Webb on Instagram. I'm going to explain why that actually matters and what it means and how much we should read into it, and also what some kind of other insiders with the Giants, i.e. the broadcasters, are saying about the team's intentions this offseason. So we'll get into all of that in just a minute. And before we do, all right, as promised, we're going to get into this. It's hilarious that I end up talking about people following others on Instagram. It's like I literally I don't have an Instagram, but I do now because I had to get on there in order to kind of do a little digging into this story of Shohei Ohtani, in fact, yes, following Logan Webb on Instagram. So the full story is that there was an article by Susan Slusser recently that Logan Webb, it was Logan Webb talking about Shohei Ohtani, and that he knows that the team is interested in him and that he's trying to do his part. And he said that he followed Shohei on Instagram, but he didn't get a follow back, so he didn't get very far in his recruiting efforts. And it was kind of like, a joke. But today, like the most recent person that Shohei Ohtani has followed is in fact Logan Webb. And so that probably backs up to me that he likely was in San Francisco on Saturday. We know that during the Aaron Judge pursuit, they brought in Logan Webb as part of that meeting that they had in San Francisco. They had a dinner in not the Cloud Club, the Gotham Club out in the arcade in right field. Aaron Judge's parents were in attendance. And Logan Webb was there. I think another player was there, and obviously Farhan, and at the time Gabe. But now Buster being part of ownership, and Farhan and Bob Melvin and Logan Webb, it's a pretty good kind of group to put together. And the fact that Ohtani followed Webb, I don't know. Like I personally, I refuse to read too much into something like this. It just probably means they met, but it doesn't mean, okay, he's signing. Whereas like with Carlos Correa last year, once the news broke that he had agreed to terms with the Giants, he set Oracle Park as his background picture, and he followed like all kinds of Giants. And so it was clear, but we already knew that he was, intending to play for the Giants because he had a contractual obligation to play for the Giants. If they simply said, yes, you passed your physical, we want you on our team. But I mean, here's the thing too. Ohtani follows all of 177 people on Instagram, and he has himself 6 million followers. I follow 192 people on Twitter, none on Instagram, because I just created this account today just for this reason. But 177 people, and apparently very few non-former teammates. That I think he follows like Randy Arozarena, but they played together in the WBC, not together, but they played against each other in the WBC. Arozarena is a character. I don't know. Maybe I have no idea why he follows Arozarena, but just randomly, suddenly following Logan Webb probably indicates to me that they met on Saturday, but it doesn't mean, okay, he's signing with the San Francisco Giants. You know, they might have connected and made a friendship, and he just followed him, and it doesn't, and maybe, who knows? All we know is that it happened, and so Logan Webb got his wish, and hey, they can DM now. I don't know if that's how it works on Instagram, where you have to follow each other for direct messages, but he followed him on Instagram today, and so that is a story. It is kind of the era we live in where that's a story, but it is. And so lastly, I just want to get into like some of the Giants broadcasters discussing the Giants offseason and their intentions, because these guys do have inside information, and they're not, they're in the loop about things. And so Dave Flemming was on the Athletics' Tim Kawakami show, the TK Show podcast, and he said several things, including, for sure, I think it could happen pretty fast in terms of the Giants making moves. And he said this week we could have some big Giants news. They're not only in, but they're in hard. That doesn't guarantee success. We've seen it over and over again where the Giants come up short on some of these big players for lots of different reasons, but they are in hard on the biggest names. He says when the Sonny Gray news popped up, to me, that's a very Giants-like contract, and Sonny Gray is a guy the Giants know well. I think he was a good fit in some ways, but the Giants were not going to block themselves off from one of these bigger deals by making a preemptive deal for him. I don't know that for a fact, but that was my read of that. I was like, that would have been a pretty good contract for the Giants, but it's too early. They've prioritized a certain number of these players, and they have to see those through. And then Mike Krukow on KNBR's Murph and Mac show on Tuesday of last week said, oh, they're serious. And right now, this is all reconnaissance. They're gathering information, and they're way deep in their presentation to Ohtani and his people about San Francisco and how good it would be for him, They're totally in on this, and they're totally in on 10 other things. Right now, Farhan and Pete Patella, they're working, and they're working hard. I think it's this next 10-day period, you're going to see at least 3 moves from the Giants, and that's saying a lot. And I think it's going to happen between now and the next 10 days. And that was, again, on Tuesday of last week. And so we're almost 7 days into that 10-day window. And so that's where you start to say, well, what's true? And to hear, those, again, he's in the loop. Mike Krukow knows people, right? Larry Baer is his boss. And so, that's the thing. It's like, he was probably asked, like, are they really serious? Are they actually, these, in my opinion, kind of silly questions, like, do they mean it? Are they actually trying to get these guys? Yes. 100% yes. And they did it last year. They got an agreement with Carlos Correa. They outbid the next closest team by $60 million. And Aaron Judge took their offer back to the Yankees and had them match it and then accepted it. So, like, they're in. It's just getting someone to take their money. And so that is the big question, is can they do it? And, they're due. The Giants are just due. And I think it's going to happen. I think something very significant. And Krukow saying 3 significant deals in the next 10 days about, 6 days ago? We'll see. Wait and see. Buckle up and let's go. So coming up tomorrow, more from the winter meetings. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to be breaking down the latest. It could be major news. And if there's major news, we'll respond immediately with an emergency podcast. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I cannot wait to be with you again tomorrow. I really can't, because I hope it's, the winter meetings are a crazy time and they are underway. So be sure to come back, everydayers. And even those of you who might be future everydayers, now is the time to be an everydayer. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.